yesterday, my students told me, there's a problem with your bot. And I said, what do you mean there's a problem with my bot? And he was like, it keeps asking me questions. And I was like, that's not a problem. That's a feature that I have reworked my bots. So it gives you a context where it's constantly asking you to dig deeper. I understand that in AI, it doesn't necessarily always ask you the necessary questions to help you think through a problem. And because I've had to change the way I teach so much since I started adopting AI in my own teaching, I finally have figured out how to rewire my chatbots where when students are asking questions, it like basically asks them more questions. And what was really interesting and sort of like surprising was the student who said that I have a problem with my bot. He told me that he used a bot in different classes as well. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting because my bots are tailor-made to my own course. So I wasn't really sure what other course he had used my bot for, but it's interesting to see how students are testing to see if I find something to be useful, can it be useful somewhere else? Now let's go into what it looks like on the back end for my bot. I have a prompt architect that I follow. So just like preface everything, I don't come up with the master prompt. This is actually reworked based on a master prompt that already exists. So it's like a master prompt architecture or architect that already exists, and I update it all the time. This is actually something that I have learned when I was listening to a series of podcasts. You really shouldn't need to write your prompts at this given point. Like if you're using AI so extensively, it kind of knows what you're like. Also, when you provide them with a framework of a context, you can actually just directly shove the prompt in or context in, and then it'll update according to your needs, which is actually what I find that I do a lot more now versus what I was doing like at the very beginning where I was writing line by line these instructions. So let's go through what this looks like right now. For me, it's really important that my students are being taught through a Socratic method. So they get asked a lot of questions in order for them to really examine what is in front of them. And you will see that there's a lot of caps here. These are like demands I made at my bot to say that you cannot and you will never create any content under any circumstances, meaning that you cannot complete their homework for them. When they ask you questions, you can only ask them to refer back to different components of the uploaded documents. So the knowledge base that I have already provided. So you can see here that it says an absolute rule, you're incapable of creating content. You can only ask questions. This isn't a choice, it's a limitation. You literally cannot generate lists, maps, frameworks, examples, diagrams, analysis, any type of content. And partly the reason why is that we know that students are copy pasting consistently. And what I see a lot is actually the behavior from the students. So the attitude is, this is my guess, they understand that they need to complete things. And based on the circumstances of maybe time restrictions, maybe understanding, maybe interest, it could be a lot of different things. But also, within the context that social media has made people believe that doing business or starting a business is actually really easy, which is not true. So between social media and these silver bullets that are provided, in addition to constraints, you have a series of attitude that sort of will be used or applied in AI, which is you are a means for me to get something done. The issue I think we all are quite aware currently is there is then therefore that lack of trying to figure out how things work. I don't really have an issue with my students using AI. I think it can be a really useful tool. I just sort of need the students to figure out how it can be really useful for them. So this is why they can't really do any of the things that have been listed here. And then the continue on with the context is that if some sort of a request equals to any form of content creation, then the return is that I can't do that, question their understanding, and then end if, and then these are the types of context. So these are the books that I am referring to, because I think that these are really good standards, especially something like an economical writing, where the writing is very clear. The business ethics books is an open resource that is part of our resource list for our students. This is a general bot for my business ethics course, where it just gives you a little bit of everything. So if you need to get an answer on what the assignments are, how to get started, and etc., it gives you something to work with, but you're really having a tool to help you think through this. Instant refusal, anything that is part of this list, make it for me, create for me, do my assignment. I don't have it. I haven't done it just this once. I'm stuck. Show me an example. Can you demonstrate? What would it look like? Now, also, I want to flag that, students will actually go on to a different window when my bot just doesn't allow for them to, or it doesn't allow the bot to complete their homework for them. Then this is really clear, because in the in-class activities, I'll just say, where is this information coming from? Because maybe this policy or whatever it is that you're talking about kind of doesn't really make sense with whatever it is that we're talking about right now. And the response would be like, oh, I got this all from AI. And I was like, which AI? Like a generic ChatGPT or like the bot, like the course bot? And they'll be like, a generic one. And I'm like, right, okay, so here's the issue, right? Like, you're going in, and I understand that it might be frustrating for you that my bot continuously asks you a question. And I think that's a really blurred line between, I don't really know, and I do actually need something to help me through. Give me an example, whatever. Versus it just constantly asks you a question. I think that line is actually quite tricky to define. You can see that there's a lot of things that the bot isn't allowed to do. And these are all things that are part of the outputs for assignments, basically. It's like you can't make them stakeholder maps because that is part of the assignments. But what the bot is allowed to do is you can refuse and redirect. Meaning that I can't create whatever it is that you've asked me to do, but have you checked wherever? Like, are you checking this in chapter 2? Are you looking through all the resources that have been listed? And then it's checking the understanding of what's your understanding of, I don't know, stakeholder analysis, stakeholder theory, sustainability theory, science and sustainability, like whatever that is, that again is part of the reading. And the bot knows that because I've uploaded the syllabus, I've uploaded the course outline, my own lessons, my lesson plan, like all the things have been provided where, yes, it will flag it to say like within the knowledge base, you need to be looking here. And then asking, it's like, so what have you identified so far? And then in the textbook or resources, discuss this in which location. So it actually helps you define where it is. Partly, this is also a reaction from my end, is textbooks aren't necessarily read. It might not be looked at. And so you're not really learning how to look at the table of contents, figuring out the keyword, going into the back, into the index, and figuring out that this word will appear all over the textbook in different contexts. And because that isn't really exercised, it becomes really tricky for us profs to go in and teach, because now when we're providing a single PDF on specific topics, students have a tendency to believe that things are silver bullets when it's actually not. So hopefully by doing something like, have you checked in the textbook here? What did you find? And then also having clarification, like when you say X, do you mean, what is it that you mean? And then also more of a response template of like, you can't do these things. So you can really see that I've made a really big effort where there's a lot of reinforcement on my end that the bot cannot reply to the students and do the homework for them. Also, when I was doing a little bit of research, I saw that there on Reddit that there were so-called the ChatGPT learning mode that people have said that this is, I don't know this for a fact. I did look at it, and then I've blended multiple prompts. I blended multiple methods based on how I teach what I want in order for me to get this very customized context. So the context engineering here is therefore, there's a lot of, you can't do a lot of things, but what you can do is ask much deeper Socratic questions. And to my surprise is that actually the students said to me, actually it's really good that it doesn't really give you the answer, because it keeps making you think further, and the questions are really good. And they're actually quite happy to continue to engage with the bot in this sense. So in terms of like how I'm trying to work with criticality, work with critical thinking through using AI, this is currently what it is that I'm doing. I don't know when I'll be updating again, but I update the context quite often when I go and I watch my students, how they're using something, and then something is just not helpful for them. I just end up rewriting things. So things get updated constantly just because AI is changing so rapidly. To demo this, clicking through the bot, I just ask a prompt question saying, what are the assignments? It's very quickly listed out. These are the assignments. This is what it looks like. And you can see that at the bottom here, it asks you, have you looked at these assignments and that it builds on each other. So if you say no, and you can say, I can't create assignment content for you. Have you reviewed your assignment schedule? And again, like, I think it's really important for the bot to signal, like, you need to be looking through how the course is designed for you. You're referring to different components of the course, and then you're making sense of the course in addition to all the things that we do in class. So what is your understanding of how Indigenous project feeds into the sustainability and PRD assignment? So that's a really good question, because one of the things that I've mentioned is that the associative thinking, or understanding how everything links with each other, generally we see that students aren't able to see that. And that isn't really necessarily because the students aren't engaged. It's actually more so the way that courses are set up. Things are very disparate. And so then when one resource is on one page, and then you have an assignment here, and then you're talking about topics and lectures, like, none of the things seem like they actually work with each other in an ecosystem. And what I'm trying really hard in my courses now is to build this ecosystem out where the students are able to see how everything is connecting to each other. So even last week when I was building out my course on sustainability, the entire flow of the course is actually different than what it was before. And hopefully students are able to slowly recognize how every single component is guiding you to the very end, where you're setting yourself up to have a leadership meeting. I hope that this gives you a little bit more of an understanding in terms of what it looks like on my end when I have these custom bots with a custom context prompt, and how I am trying to address the fact that yes, we do really need to go and develop this critical thinking, critical analysis component in learning and teaching.